Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a topic that's both, I'd say, adorable and a little alarming.
Yeah.
Invasive species.
Yeah.
We're talking raccoons.
Raccoon's on the rampage.
On the rampage, but
Not in the way you might think, though.
not in the way you might think.
Right.
Yeah.
We're going to be exploring how a board game, Raccoon Rampage, is shedding light on this surprisingly complex challenge. Like, how do you even manage invasive species?
Okay.
And the research on how effective this game is as a tool.
I gotta admit, when I first heard about a board game about raccoons,
Yeah.
I was picturing something a little, I don't know, a little too cutesy for a deep dive, you know?
Real.
Convince me this is as serious as it sounds.
Oh, this is serious, but it's also seriously fun.
Okay.
The research we're diving into today, it comes from this fascinating paper, and it's exploring just how effective these so-called serious games can be as learning tools.
Okay.
And they're looking specifically at how Raccoon Rampage helps people understand the very real threat of invasive species.
All right, you've piqued my interest.
Okay.
But before we get to the game,
Okay.
let's talk about the real issue.
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
What makes a species invasive anyway? Isn't everything technically non-native somewhere?
You're hitting on a very crucial point. Just being non-native, that doesn't make a species a problem.
Right.
It's when they start disrupting the environment, the economy, or even human health. That's when we call them invasive.
Okay.
Think of it like this. Invasive species, they don't just move into a neighborhood.
Right.
They bulldoze the existing houses, and then they rewrite the rules of the neighborhood watch.
Okay, that's a pretty vivid image. So we're talking about more than plants and animals just being far from home. These are species that can outcompete native wildlife, disrupt whole ecosystems, even spread diseases.
Exactly.
No wonder this is a global issue.
Exactly. And that's where Raccoon Rampage comes in.
Okay.
It brings this complex challenge to life. And what's so fascinating is how it does it. It's not through like a dry lecture or a textbook.
Yeah.
It's through a game, which is really cool.
So tell us about this game. How does Raccoon Rampage actually work?
Okay, so imagine this. You and your friends gather around a table,
Okay.
but instead of being dealt cards, you're actually assigned roles. So you might be an environmental agency that's trying to protect native species, or maybe you're a hunting lobbyist advocating for population control.
Wait, hold on. Hunting lobbyists. This game doesn't shy away from the different sides of this issue, huh?
Not at all. And that's one of the things that makes it so effective.
Okay.
Each player, or stakeholder in this case, they have their own goals and strategies for managing this raccoon population. And that actually reflects the real-world tensions and complexities of the issue.
So it's not as simple as raccoons bad, let's get rid of them.
Right.
You have to navigate these competing priorities, which is a pretty accurate reflection of, real-life environmental management.
Absolutely. And the research that we're looking at today really digs deep into how playing this game translates into actual learning and even behavior change.
And this is all happening in Chapter 3 of the research paper, right?
Yes.
Give us the highlights. What kind of learning are we talking about here?
So Chapter 3 is where it gets really interesting. They had 86 participants play Raccoon Rampage.
Wow.
And they filled out questionnaires before and after the game. The researchers were looking at three main areas: awareness of the problems that are caused by raccoons, understanding the need for diverse management strategies, and perhaps most importantly, the power of collaboration.
Let's break those down.
Okay.
Starting with awareness. What did players learn about the problems raccoons can cause? I have to admit, I'm picturing, trash cans being tipped over more than anything too devastating.
Right, but it goes way beyond that. While many players knew raccoons could be a nuisance, like you said, tipping over trash cans, the game dramatically increased their understanding of the specific damage these critters can cause. For example, raccoons are a major threat to native European species like amphibians, reptiles, birds.
Wow.
Raid nests, prey on eggs, compete for food and resources, which can over time devastate populations.
Wow. I had no idea their impact was so significant. So it sounds like the game takes what we might consider a cute animal and makes you confront the very real consequences of their presence.
Exactly. And it's not just about the ecological impact either.
Okay.
Raccoon Rampage also highlights the economic costs of these invasive species.
Okay.
So they can damage crops, they can spread diseases to livestock, and even impact tourism, costing communities a lot of money.
So it's getting people to think about the larger systems at play here, right?
Exactly.
The interconnectedness of the environment, the economy, even human health.
Precisely. And that leads us to the second area of learning, understanding the need for diverse management strategies.
So did the game offer a clear solution to the raccoon rampage? What did players learn about managing these populations?
That's what's so fascinating. There wasn't one magic solution. Players quickly realized that managing invasive species requires a multifaceted approach. Raccoon Rampage exposed them to various strategies, each with its pros and cons, so they could try controlled hunting, habitat modification, public education campaigns, or even more creative solutions.
That makes so much sense. It's about adapting your approach based on these constantly changing dynamics of the ecosystem, much like players have to do in the game itself.
Exactly. The research found that after playing the game, people were much more likely to support a combination of approaches. They understood that there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Okay, so instead of just yelling, get rid of them all,
Yeah.
people were stepping back and saying, okay, this is complex, there are trade-offs to be made. Did the game reveal any particularly effective strategies?
Well, that's part of what's so brilliant about Raccoon Rampage and why this research is so compelling. It wasn't about, pushing one single solution. Instead, it revealed a fascinating shift in how people were thinking. They became much more open to these diverse management strategies, even ones they might not have initially considered.
Okay, so that's starting to sound like that aha moment you promised at the beginning.
Yeah.
But we still haven't gotten to what I think is like the most interesting part of this whole thing, collaboration.
Right.
You mentioned the game forces people with different viewpoints to work together. How did that actually play out?
Yeah, so remember those different roles we talked about? Well, the research actually found that even though the players all started with, kind of these conflicting priorities, they consistently found themselves working together.
Okay.
They had to, or the raccoons really would take over.
Oh. Okay, I get it now. Raccoon Rampage. So even with people representing, different interests, they were able to find common ground, compromise to manage the raccoon population. That's incredible. That's not always easy to do in the real world.
Exactly. And this is where the research gets really, really exciting. It suggests that this type of collaborative game-based learning, it can have these lasting effects. It's not just about understanding the issue on paper. It's about building the skills and the willingness to collaborate to find solutions together.
So players are walking away with a deeper understanding of invasive species, a more nuanced perspective on management strategies, and, a better grasp of how to work together to solve complex problems. Did this actually translate into real-world action?
That's the question, right? Does playing a board game really change anything?
Right.
Well, this research offers a pretty compelling answer. So players who went through this collaborative process, they were more likely to engage in these real-world actions to address invasive species. Some even reported supporting environmental organizations or advocating for policy changes after playing the game, which I think is really neat.
Wow, that's huge. It's like the game planted this seed of activism, a desire to actually go out and do something.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about how the game impacts our understanding, but I'm curious, did Raccoon Rampage actually change how people felt about raccoons?
That's a great question.
Did they still find them as, cute after the game was over?
That gets at the heart of how powerful a tool like this can be. While some players initially saw raccoons through, those rose-colored glasses.
Oh, they're adorable bandits.
Exactly. The game led them to a more balanced view.
So no more romanticizing the bandit.
Exactly. They started recognizing raccoons as complex creatures with both positive and negative aspects. They appreciated, sure, their role in the ecosystem, but also understood the very real harm they could cause when their populations were unchecked.
Fascinating. So it wasn't about, demonizing raccoons. It was about understanding that bigger picture.
Yeah.
Appreciating their complexity.
And the research actually found a direct link between how much somebody learned from the game and how much their perception of raccoons shifted.
Interesting.
Those who really dove deep into the mechanics of the game, grasped the complexities, were much more likely to develop this more nuanced perspective.
It makes you wonder, how often do we base our opinions on incomplete information?
Oh, all the time.
Or overly simplistic views?
All the time. And that's what makes this research so compelling. It speaks to the power of games, Particularly serious games like Raccoon Rampage.
Yeah.
to engage us in a different way, to challenge our assumptions and encourage us to dig a little deeper.
We've been talking a lot about raccoons, but this feels so much bigger than just one species, right?
It does.
What other real-world issues could benefit from this serious game approach?
It's an exciting thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
Imagine tackling climate change or political polarization or even global pandemics through the lens of a game.
Right.
It might sound unconventional, but as this research shows, it has the potential to be incredibly effective.
We've seen how Raccoon Rampage can increase awareness, shift perspectives, and even, like we said, spark action. What's even more intriguing is that it does all this while still being, fun and engaging.
Yeah.
It's not a lecture.
Right.
It's an experience.
That's the magic of it. It taps into our natural desire to play, to explore, to learn through doing. And when you can do that while tackling serious issues, I mean, that's a winning combination.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder.
It makes you wonder what other doors a tool like this could open, right? Like if we can make learning about invasive species fun and engaging, imagine the possibilities for, other complex issues.
Absolutely. And it's not just about making learning fun, It's about making it stick.
Right.
This research suggests that by immersing ourselves in these simulated worlds, by stepping into these different shoes, we gain this deeper, more embodied understanding. Like we're not just passively absorbing information, we're actively grappling with it. We're experiencing the consequences of our choices, which I think is really, really neat.
And that experience, that active engagement, that's what seems to be driving those aha moments.
Exactly.
Those shifts in perspective we keep coming back to.
Precisely. Yeah. And it makes you think about the potential here for bridging divides, for fostering empathy and understanding in areas where we often struggle to find common ground.
It's a powerful idea, isn't it? That a game, something often associated with, leisure and amusement, could actually hold the key to tackling some of our most pressing challenges.
It really is. And while Raccoon Rampage focuses on invasive species, it really does offer, I think, a compelling blueprint for how we might approach other complex issues. Climate change, social justice, political polarization. Imagine the possibilities if we could approach those challenges with the same spirit of play, collaboration, and systems thinking that this game encourages.
It's almost like we need to rethink our whole approach to education and engagement, We've been trained to think of learning as this serious, oftentimes tedious process. But what if it could be more playful, more immersive, more human?
Right. And that's what's so exciting about this research. It's not just about raccoons. It's about reimagining how we learn, how we connect, and ultimately, how we create change.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of invasive species and the unexpected power of games, we have one final thought-provoking question for you. What real-world issue do you think could benefit from a serious game approach? Let us know your ideas on social media, and who knows, maybe the next deep dive will be inspired by you. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep playing those games. You might be surprised by what you learn.
That's right.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.